Antibiotic. Biology war. Bacteria, viruses, fungus. Cell tend to survive. Resistance, infection, pandemic. When we get sick, doctor write prescription program to get well. But if we feel bad, our brain adapted to use antibiotics to get well, and we consume arbitrarily. Many bacteria have cell wall. Cell wall is peptidoglycan layer outside the plasma membrane. Is polymer by glucose involved in acetylmorphic acid and in acetyl glucosamine cross together, and short chain amino acids linking glucose sites. In biosynthesis, cell wall process transportation to cell membrane and peptidoglycan become cross-linking. Two major enzymes are involved cross-linking: transpeptidase and dianyl carboxypeptidase, also known as penicillin binding protein. Beta-lactam antibiotics include all penicillin. This structure is capable of binding enzymes that cross-link peptidoglycan and link to penicillin binding enzyme and inhibit to cross between peptidoglycan layer and bacteria damage and bacteria cell explode. Antibiotics are used to prevent and treat bacteria infection by kill or inhibit growth. If bacteria change in response to the use of this medicine, we call AR or antibiotics resistance. Antibiotics can be bought for human or animal use without prescription. The emergence and spread of resistance is made worse, similarly in countries without a standard treatment guideline. Antibiotics are often over-prescribed by health workers and overused by the public. Antibiotics lead bacteria adaptation or mutation and turn to new strain that resistance to antibiotics regimen. The inappropriate use antibiotics in one person might develop a resistant strain that spread to people that do not use antibiotics. In 2015, 30% of outpatient antibiotics prescribed were unnecessary, and also in my country the fridge is drugstore and people store it for a long time and consume many times.
Fisheries with trade, with industry and with national governments across the world. About 2/3 of antibiotics are actually used in animals. And antibiotics, unlike other drugs, will develop resistance the more they're used. The more they are abused, the more quickly this will happen.
Have we already got to that point, though, haven't we? Clearly, in your terms, they are being abused, they're being used far too liberally, and the damage has been done. So either we find new antibiotics or we're doomed?
We have to work on all fronts. We do need industry to develop more antibiotics, to find new formulations and ways of working existing antibiotics. We need to get much better at controlling infection in both the human and the animal sector 12 million tonnes of colistin are being used 12,000 tonnes in China each year, 800 tonnes in the US and 400 in Europe.
And how much do you think of that is being used as almost as a preventive measure rather than actually needed? I mean, it could be, I presume, issues of hygiene and things like that could go a long way to deal with the issues instead.
Absolutely, and not using antibiotics as growth promoters.
And while there are some new antibiotics in development, none of them are accepted to be effective against most dangerous form of antibiotics resistance bacteria. Using appropriate antibiotics have been increasing AR or antibiotic resistance. ARCs in the USA kill approximately 23,000 patients a year and incurs $20 billion medical expense. Antibiotics agents are at least partially responsible for the development of serious infection. The focus of stewardship progress is improve clinical outcome, decrease AR or antibiotic resistance, and healthcare costs.
Antibiotic resistance is a growing public health concern worldwide. Patients and pharmacists can play an important role in combating antibiotic resistance. Pharmacists can help their patients get smart about antibiotic use by teaching 3 key messages. Antibiotics are drugs that fight infections caused by bacteria. Antibiotics are powerful drugs, but they are not the cure for all that ails you. Antibiotics are not effective against viral infections like the common cold, most sore throats.
Antibiotic resistance is putting the achievement of modern medicine at risk. Organ transplantation, chemotherapy, and surgeries such as caesarean section become much more dangerous without effective antibiotics for preventing and treating of infection. AR appears when bacteria evade the effect of antibiotics through different mechanisms. Bacteria are able to neutralize the effect of antibiotics or export the antibiotics out of bacteria. Some can modify their outer receptor and antibiotics cannot attach them. Bacteria can resist through mutation in DNA. Mechanism of AR. 1. Intrinsic resistance. Intrinsic resistance antibiotic that affect of cell wall. Some bacteria have beta-lactamase and sulfoamidase and cannot affect on them. 2. Acquire resistance. If bacteria containing resistance DNA died, naked DNA transferred to sufficient similar bacteria. It will able naked DNA and transfer to host bacteria and acquire resistance. Today, manipulation of AR gene is great concern. 3. Genetic element. Change in DNA by mutation lead different bacterial component and receptor which render the bacteria unrecognized the antibiotics. Since Paul Ehrlich discovered first effective antimicrobial agent and then Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin from
bacteria.
No.
You like saying no?
Yes.
Not bacteria, not viruses, so
Fungus.
Fighting against pathogenesis microbe is important, but microbes are looking for a way to survive. Antibiotic resistance or AR only can be minimized through stewardship and prevent use inappropriate antibiotics. People should be educated on vertical etiology of different infection diseases in which antibiotics are unnecessary. Antibiotic resistance is rising to dangerously high level in all parts of the world. New resistance mechanisms are emerging and spreading globally, threatening our ability to treat common infection disease. So, what we should do? Only use antibiotics when prescribed by certified health professional. 2. Never demand antibiotics if your health workers say you don't need them. 3. Always follow your health worker advice when using antibiotics. 4. Prevent infection by regularly washing hands, avoiding close contact with sick people, and keeping vaccination up to date. In the end, I thank you very much for watching my video till end, and I would be appreciate your comment for channel content. I'm very sorry for my pronunciation, I'm beginner, and I hope to create something that will help people. Please subscribe and like this video. Contact with me by email in description.